And to do this, we're going to go into the layout mode and just make sure we're not going to move the camera by accident, so that's turned off in there. And press 0 to come out of camera mode. Let's bring this down out of the way. So I want to add an object that's going to act as the volume. So we're going to add a cube. I'm going to scale this cube up so that it encompasses the entire scene. Just go into top view by pressing 7 on the keyboard. Then into wireframe. And number 5 is going to orthographic. Let's just move this over there. Scale it a bit more. I'm going to press 1 on the keyboard. Go into edit mode. In fact, before I do that, Control A, and then apply the scale. Into edit mode, into vertex mode by pressing 1 on the keyboard. I'm going to move that down under the ocean. And I'm going to move these 2 or these 4 at the bottom up to the lowest point in the sand, just beneath. Press 0. Press 5 to come out of orthographic. And then you can see we've got this cube encompassing the entire scene. We don't want it to go over the ocean though. We're going to have it just slightly under. Okay, so back out of edit mode. What we need to do now is apply the shader. So into the shaders view again. Let's come out of camera mode. I'm going to isolate the cube by pressing / on the numpad. I'm going to add a new material. Press N. We don't want principled, so we can delete that. We're going to use a volume, but just temporarily, we're going to set it up in surface mode. So Shift A, and then we're going to choose a geometry node. And the reason we're doing this is we want to get the X, Y, Z coordinates of the object, and then use that to give a different color to the bottom near the sand than it is at the top. So we can sort of have the effect of sand blowing around near to the seabed. Control Shift click on position, go into rendered view. And this is what we've got so far. We don't want that, so Shift A, S, separate X, Y, Z, and plug that into the top. And at the moment we're seeing the X, which is the black and white in this direction, and then we've got Y, and the one we want is Z. It's not going all the way down to the bottom of the cube, so what we need to do is Shift A, S, use a map range node, and then just slide the minimum down until the area here is at the bottom. So around about there. And let's just move the max down as well. So up rather, so that the white area is solid white just when it gets to the top. That would be perfect, but so you can see the solid white here is starting this area. We want it to start at the top. So bring that up. Hopefully you can see that in the video to about there. Okay, so now we've got the mask that we're going to use to control where the colours are distributed on this cube or in this volume. Alright, so we'll go back here and we'll add a volume node. So Shift A, S, a principled volume, and plug that into the volume socket. And then we'll plug this map range. In fact, let's get rid of that. So we need to control this a bit more. So I'm going to add a Shift A, S, and then a ramp, and connect this up, and then Shift A, S, and this time a mix, RGB. So we can mix between the top and the bottom slot based on the black and white mask that's coming out of this Z position that we've got. So plug that into the factor, and then plug this into the color of the principled volume. And we can't really see much at the moment because we've not got any lights in the scene because we've come into isolation mode. So press the / again, and then press 0 on the keyboard, and that'll take us inside the volume. And all we need to do now is tweak the density until we can actually see into the distance. And at the moment, you can see we've got the clouds and the sun and things there. We don't want those. So just tweak that up until they disappear. Somewhere about there. And I think I want to move that sun out of the way, just so we don't have to have it so we can have it a bit more dense, or a bit less dense rather, without seeing that sun through it. So just quickly go into world mode in the shader editor. Let's just rotate that around until that's disappeared. Problem is, we do want those nice reflections on the ocean. So what I might do is actually tilt that up out of the way, just so we're keeping some reflections on the water. It doesn't matter because we're not going to actually see anything through there, so that's fine. We'll go back into object mode, and now we need to set up the colours. So I want the effect of sand sort of floating around down here, and just to make it a bit more obvious for the volume, I'm going to add a light, so point light. So let's go back into this view down here, press Z, wireframe, and let's just add a point light in about there, or if we go inside the cube rather, about there. And then Shift A, I'm going to add a light and a point light. And I want to get this somewhere near the camera. So at the moment it is pretty near the camera. Let's just move it up a bit, just there. I want to make that a bit brighter because it's not having much effect on the volume at the moment. So let's turn it up to 500. You can see now we're getting a nice, let's turn off overlays, we're getting a nice glow, which is being caused by the volume. So we can probably, if we go back to the cube, the volume, we can tweak that density down a little bit to be a bit less perhaps, somewhere about there. That's looking pretty good. And at the moment we're not seeing much of the ocean, so I'm going to bring this down a little bit as well. So G, then Z, bring that down. The more downwards we bring it, the more of a gap we've got between the top and the ocean, and we'll be able to see through a little bit more. Alright, so I think what we'll do, we may need to do now, in fact, is go back into edit mode, into side view, and I just want to bring those up now a bit more. And let's just test whether or not that's messed up the mask that we made. So we'll come back in here, get rid of that, go on to this one. Let's just check if it's still at the bottom. That's fine. Is that still at the top? Yeah, that's good. Okay, so plug that back into volume now, get rid of that. That into volume, let's get rid of this viewer, and then back inside, and there we are. So we've got these two colours. I'm going to change this to green. I'm going to change the bottom one to blue, something like that. And you can see now we're getting a separation. We're getting the green towards the bottom. We're getting the purple towards the top. So it's the top one we want to use for the bottom, which is counterintuitive. So let's just switch these over. There we are. So now we're getting the bottom one represents what's at the bottom, and the green one represents what's at the top. So the first thing I'm going to add is a bit of sort of noise, animated noise, to simulate sand being blown around near the seabed. So Shift A, S, and I'm going to use a noise texture. I'm going to make this noise texture 4D, and this means that we'll get an extra variable, W, which we can then use to animate. So that's basically time. Okay, and I'm going to plug this into a color ramp again. In fact, we'll firstly Shift A, S, and then we'll use a mix RGB. And then we'll plug the factor from the noise into the factor of the mix RGB. And I'm going to give this some bright colours. Then we can plug that into the bottom. Give it a second to calculate. We may not need the colour ramp, we'll see. Alright. We'll plug it into both just so we can see it more easily. And you can see we're getting sort of a noise. It's quite, maybe it could do with being a bit small. Let's have a look. There we are. So we're getting sort of a noise texture distributing these two colours. And these are only going to be visible near the seabed. And this is just going to make that light look a bit nicer. So in the W, click on this and press hashtag, type frame, and then probably divide it by 4. And let's see what this looks like. Play that back. So we're getting a little bit of movement, and if you look at this light, let's make that light a bit brighter. Maybe 1000, maybe even more. Something like that, perhaps. You can see that's having an effect on the light. Okay. If we just press play, it's moving around. Maybe it could do with... Maybe try turning the scale down to 10. It's difficult to see when it's playing back because it's not calculating quick enough. So let's just turn the viewport render samples down to something like 3, and then it should render a bit faster. Try bringing those up. I think maybe we'll give it a bit more contrast. So S and then search. In fact, we've got the ramp already. Let's bring this across. We'll just drop that in between these two. Just pause it so it can calculate quicker. And if I now bring these across, we get more separation between those two colours. Something like this. You can change these colours to whatever you want. I'm going to leave it at that for now. And now then, if we delete the top one by control right click and drag over this wire, we're now going to get green and then this at the bottom. But what I want the top bit to be is more of an ocean colour. So we're going to do a pretty similar thing. We'll move these out of the way. And in fact, what we'll do is we'll just copy these. Shift D, bring those up. I'm going to plug these into the top. Okay, but this time I'm going to change this to a bluish colour, more of an ocean colour. And then the one below it, a slightly darker ocean colour. Maybe a bit more. Come on, mouse. Oh. There we are. And there we're getting sort of the same effect, but higher up with different colours, so it's more of an oceany colour. I think maybe we'll bring these a bit more red in the bottom. And now what I can do is control where this starts and ends. And we can do that at the top here. So the white area is the bottom one. So if I move this white area across, it'll make it more of a harsh. Bring that down as well. You'll see we're getting more of a sort of a harsher transition between the two. Maybe not quite that much. So that's looking pretty good. I think maybe I might increase the density slightly. Or maybe, let's try. Somewhere about there, perhaps. Maybe increase that. This is starting to give us that more colourful Disney look. I mean, obviously it's not realistic, but that's not what we want. Maybe try yellow. No, I think we'll stick with green. It's looking pretty good. And maybe try increasing the scale of this noise a bit at the bottom. I'm going to make the scale of the top noise a bit less, so it's larger. If I play this back, you can see the light is being affected now by the animated noise. So just tweak it until you're happy with it. The scale's a bit too much. What I can also do now is I can use the range to move those up and down. So you can see I'm getting more yellow now at the bottom by increasing that. If I move that to the left, then we get more blue. I think I might try giving this object coordinates. And that's looking much better, in fact. So let's just go back into here. Now we can bring the scale down. And the noise is looking more like noise now. It was looking a bit too widespread before. So let's try that. And if I want, I can go and bring it into edit mode and just bring those down a bit more. Strangely, I can still see through. That's weird. I'm still getting a volume, even though there's no volume there. Let's come out of edit mode. Interesting. So when you edit this, it doesn't update in real time. But I brought that down, and now we're getting a bit more of the ocean visible through there. So I think that's looking pretty good. Okay, so the next thing then is to add an object of interest. So I'll just go with a Suzanne. Okay, so we'll go back into, let's go into, in fact, let's stay in this mode and just increase the scale of this a little bit so I can see a bit easier. I'll come out of the orthographic by pressing 5. And I think what I'll do is I'll just temporarily turn that into view as a box. Viewport display, change this to be a bounds. And I believe that will make it so that we can put the little 3D gizmo inside. So if we right click, if we shift right click, that will put the little gizmo where we want it. So let's have a look where the camera is. So the camera's here. We'll probably go somewhere about here, and then we'll shift A, and then mesh, and choose a monkey. You can see that's put the monkey just here. I'm going to rotate it around a bit on the Z-axis. Then bring it up. And I think we'll rotate it this way as well. And bring it back down. Just so it looks like it's buried in the sand a little bit. We'll do a Control 3 to make it smooth. Okay, and then we'll do F3, shade smooth. We'll give it a material, so new. Let's bring that back down now. And then press home to go to the material. And I'll probably make this a transmissive glass object, maybe red. We don't want it to be rough, make it shiny. And I want the light to be able to pass through it, so we're going to the material settings. We'll change blend mode to, let's try alpha blend. Oh no, that's not work. So alpha hashed. Okay. See if shadow mode. No. So screen space refraction we need to turn on. I'll give that a second to calculate. Let's try. There we are. So I need to make sure that shadow mode is on opaque. Screen space refraction is checked. And also alpha hash for the blend mode. And again, just in case you missed it before, you need to make sure in the render settings you've got screen space reflections and then refraction checked there as well, otherwise it won't work properly. You can see we can't actually see through the object, whereas if we check this, we can now see all the way through. You can change the IOR if you want. The IOR will affect the distortion of the refraction. So if I change this to 1, it'll just be see-through as if it's alpha. I think we'll leave it at something like what it was, so 1.52 for glass. Okay, let's have a look at this. Probably turn that up all the way. I'll go with something like that. And there we are, so we've got Suzanne. The next thing I want to do is add caustics. So I want the effect of light passing through the ocean and then spreading caustics all over the ocean floor, but also on the Suzanne as well.